Japan looks small on a world map, but did you know it stretches farther north-south than the entire distance from Miami to Montreal and hides over 14,000 islands, volcanoes, snow walls, and even disappearing land under the ocean? Japan is secretly huge. If you thought Japan was just Tokyo plus some temples, buckle up. Geographically, Japan is one of the wildest countries on Earth. It's a skyscraper-packed, earthquake-shaking, snow-buried, island-hoarding strip of land that straddles multiple tectonic plates and sits on the edge of some of the deepest trenches in the Pacific. By the end of this video, you'll see Japan less as a small island nation and more like a real-life level from an open-world game, complete with natural hazards, secret biomes, and terrain that literally reshapes itself. Let's dive into 50 insane Japan geography facts you probably never heard of. Islands, size, and shape. Japan is not one island. Japan is an archipelago of over 14,000 islands, but most people only recognize the big four: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. That means thousands of islands are basically unknown to most outsiders. 4 home islands dominate. Those 4 home islands make up almost all of Japan's land area. Think of them as the main map and everything else as DLC side islands. North to south, it's a climate roller coaster. Japan stretches roughly 1,900 miles north to south. For an American comparison, that's like having Alaska-style winters in the north and Florida-style beaches in the south, all in one country. Tiny land, huge sea. On land, Japan is smaller than California, but its ocean territory is massive because of all those islands and the surrounding exclusive economic zone. On a flat map, it looks small, but if you include the ocean it controls, it suddenly feels like a maritime giant, a country of remote islands. Most of Japan's islands are tiny, remote, and often uninhabited. Some are there mainly so Japan can claim more ocean, more fishing rights, more resources, more strategic space. Some islands were literally born yesterday. Japan sits in a volcanically active zone, so new islands have actually popped out of the ocean in modern times. Underwater eruptions can suddenly create new land, and some of these newborn islands have grown enough to get marked on modern maps. Other islands just vanish. The flip side, some islands have eroded or sunk back under the waves, disappearing from the map. In a few cases, Japan has had to resurvey and confirm that a tiny rock still exists above water just to keep its sea claim. Mountains, forests, and hidden wilderness. Japan is basically a mountain range. Roughly 3/4 of Japan is mountainous. Imagine trying to build cities and farms in a place where most of the terrain is steep, rugged, and unstable. That's Japan. That means very little room to live. Only a small fraction of the land is flat enough and suitable for farming and dense settlement, and that same land is where most people live. Over 120 million people are squeezed into a thin ribbon of plains and coastal zones. A surprisingly wild country. Despite its high-tech image, around 2/3 of Japan is covered in forest. For a modern industrial nation, that's a lot. Step away from Tokyo and you hit deep green mountains way faster than you'd expect. Japan's spine splits the country. A long mountain chain runs down the main islands, dividing the front facing the Pacific from the back facing the Sea of Japan. This geographic spine affects weather patterns, transportation routes, and where major cities could even exist. A volcano as a national icon. Mount Fuji, at about 12,400 feet, is Japan's highest peak and a volcano that's still officially considered active. On clear days, you can see this near-perfect cone from airplanes and office towers. Tons of active volcanoes. Japan has a huge share of the world's active volcanoes. It's like the country is sitting on a cluster of chimneys leading straight down toward the mantle. Volcanic soil feeds the country. Those volcanoes aren't just dangerous. They create incredibly fertile soils, perfect for rice and vegetables. Japan's food supply is literally built on ancient eruptions. Deep wetlands up north, in northern Japan, especially in Hokkaido, there are large wetlands that feel more like something you'd expect in northern Canada. These areas are crucial for wildlife and bird migration. Earthquakes, trenches, and the Ring of Fire. Earthquakes are a daily reality. Japan sits on multiple tectonic plates and gets around 1,500 earthquakes every year. Many are tiny and barely noticeable, but the ground is basically never truly still. Some of the deepest trenches on Earth. Off Japan's eastern coast, several deep ocean trenches reach depths of over 32,000 feet. They're deep enough that if you dropped Mount Everest into them, the peak would still be underwater. A country built by collisions, Japan's mountains exist because multiple plates are colliding, pushing land upward and crumpling the crust. That's why the terrain is so steep and landslides are a constant risk. Short, violent rivers. Because the land is so steep, many rivers in Japan are short, fast, and prone to sudden flooding. Unlike the long, slow Mississippi, a lot of Japanese rivers are more like downhill water slides. A disaster-prone landscape. Combine steep slopes, heavy rainfall, typhoons, and earthquakes. And you get a country uniquely vulnerable to landslides, floods, and tsunami. Yet people continue building and rebuilding on this shifting ground, some of the costliest disasters ever. Modern megaquakes and tsunami in Japan have caused damage worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Japan's geography makes it a beautiful but very expensive place when nature strikes. Climate extremes, from snow monsters to beaches. One country, multiple climate zones. Because of its long north-south stretch and complex terrain, Japan has everything from subarctic conditions in the north to subtropical climates in the south. You can ski deep powder and then fly to a tropical-feeling island without leaving the country. Legendary snow walls. Some mountain roads in northern Japan get buried under such insane snowfall that crews carve out snow corridors taller than buses. These walls can rise over 40 or 50 feet, turning a road into a frozen canyon. Typhoon, shield, and threat. Japan's position in the Western Pacific makes it a regular target for typhoons, basically Pacific hurricanes. Late summer and fall bring storms that test flood defenses every single year, the kamikaze typhoons. Historically, powerful typhoons even changed history, famously wrecking Mongol invasion fleets in the 1200s. Geography literally decided which side survived. Microclimates everywhere. Mountains block winds and trap moisture, creating microclimates just a few miles apart. One side of a ridge can be foggy and soaked, while the other sits in sun and dry air. Deep, nutrient-rich seas. The surrounding seas are cold, deep, and rich in nutrients, which helps support major fisheries. Geography helped turn Japan into a seafood superpower long before refrigerators or airplanes existed. Cities, land use, and human hacks. Hyper-dense coastal cities. Because flat land is so limited, Japanese cities cram millions of people into narrow coastal plains, especially around Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya. Think vertical living squeezed between the mountains and the ocean. Building on borrowed land. Japan has created artificial islands and reclaimed land for airports, ports, and even theme parks. Some major airports literally sit on man-made islands in the sea. Rivers that shape food culture. Those short, flooding rivers dump fresh sediment onto the plains, creating fertile soil. The same rivers that threaten homes also feed rice paddies and vegetable fields. Living in flood zones. Many neighborhoods are built on low river plains and former wetlands that naturally want to flood. Instead of abandoning them, Japan invests heavily in levees, dams, and giant underground flood tunnels. Hydropower from steep terrain. Fast-flowing rivers are perfect for hydropower, and Japan taps that to generate electricity. Steep geography becomes a built-in energy source. Limited farmland, intense farming. With so little land available for agriculture, farmers focus on small plots farmed very intensively. Instead of giant fields like the American Midwest, you see terraced hillsides and compact rice paddies, tiny homes, efficient layouts. Scarce land drives up prices and shrinks home sizes, especially in cities. That's why Japanese homes often pack in clever space-saving tricks: sliding doors, loft beds, and multi-use rooms. Strategy, history, and natural fortress. A natural moat around the country. Japan's separation from mainland Asia by seas and straits worked like a natural moat for most of its history. Unlike continental powers, it didn't have long land borders that armies could march across. A perfect trade position. Japan sits off the coast of East Asia, along major shipping routes connecting the United States, China, Korea, and Southeast Asia. Once it industrialized, that position helped it become a huge trading and manufacturing hub. Choke points and sea control. The narrow straits around Japan act as choke points for ships traveling between the Pacific and nearby seas. Controlling or monitoring these routes has serious strategic value. Geography and isolation. During the centuries when Japan limited foreign contact, its island geography made it easier to control exactly where and how trade happened. A few ports became tightly controlled gateways to the outside world. Natural disasters and resilience culture. Living with constant earthquakes, typhoons, and floods has helped shape a culture that expects things to break and then rebuilds quickly. The land itself trained people to plan for failure and recovery. Weird and surprising side facts. Sand dunes in a land of forests. Despite its rainy climate and mountains, Japan has impressive coastal sand dunes, especially along the Sea of Japan. You can go from green mountains to what feels like a mini desert in a short drive. Underwater pyramids. Around some of Japan's southwest islands, strange stepped rock formations under the sea have sparked debates about whether they're natural or shaped by humans. Either way, the seafloor looks like something from an ancient civilization movie. Earthquakes that raise land from the sea. In some quakes, parts of the seafloor have literally risen above the water, turning caves and reefs into exposed shoreline. So yes, Japan has places where the land was born in a single event. Islands famous for one moment. Some small islands are known almost entirely for a single event, like a legendary samurai duel or one dramatic cliff. A tiny patch of rock can become iconic because of one story. Ultra-steep farming. In mountainous regions, farmers carve narrow terraces into slopes that would look useless to most Americans. From a distance, whole hillsides look pixelated by tiny steps of rice paddies. City versus wilderness contrast. In Japan, you can go from one of the busiest train stations on Earth to a quiet mountain trail in under 2 hours. For such a densely populated country, huge areas remain almost empty and wild. Hot springs everywhere. All that volcanic activity means natural hot springs, onsen, are scattered all over the country. The same forces that cause earthquakes also heat people's bathwater. Resource poor, ingenuity rich. Japan doesn't have many domestic fossil fuels or raw materials and relies heavily on imports. Its geography basically forced it to get really good at turning limited land and resources into high-value products like cars, electronics, and precision tools. Ocean territory equals food and power. Japan's huge ocean zone gives it access to fisheries, potential offshore energy, and seabed minerals. For a land-scarce country, a lot of its real territory is underwater. Constant monitoring of the Earth. Japan runs dense networks of sensors, seismographs, and volcano monitors to keep an eye on the land and sea. Few countries watch their own ground as closely. The map is never final. With active volcanoes, the occasional new island, coastal erosion, and land lifting during earthquakes, Japan's geography is a work in progress. If you visited once and come back decades later, the outline on the map might have changed just a little. So next time someone calls Japan a small island nation, you'll know the truth. It's a sprawling chain of thousands of islands balanced on top of shifting plates, hugging some of the deepest trenches on Earth, crammed with mountains, forests, snow walls, and megacities clinging to narrow strips of flat land. It's less like a country on a map and more like Earth's ultimate hard mode save file. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 50 geography facts blew your mind the most? The insane number of islands, the underwater trenches, or the idea that Japan's map keeps changing itself? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you want more wild geography breakdowns like this, make sure to hit like, share this video with a friend who still thinks Japan is just Tokyo, and subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive.